Welcome to Season 3 of the Dance Reel podcast. I'm Kate Histon. Before we dive into this episode, I would love a favour from you. To help us bring some wonderful guests to our show and grow, please subscribe or follow this channel, like, comment and share with a friend. That would be a great help. Thank you so much. This episode was sponsored by Master Dancer Mindset. Know yourself, be yourself and express yourself on and off the stage. Welcome to this week's episode of the Dance Reel podcast. This is a very important one to watch. Today's conversation is one every studio owner and teacher needs to be confident in having: how to spot bullying between students and what to do about it. When we think of bullying, we often imagine something obvious, a child being taunted or pushed, but in dance studios, it's usually far more subtle. It can show up in small social shifts, in who's being left out, and in unspoken hierarchies that develop among dancers. After 23 years of running my school, I learnt that managing bullying isn't about disciplining one student. It's about understanding the relational dynamics and the system that allows it to exist. So let's look at what bullying can look like between dancers. Bullying is repeated behaviour that causes harm, exclusion, or distress to another person. It's not just conflict or rivalry. It's targeted and sustained, often about power and belonging. In dance studios, it might look like certain dancers being left out of group chats or social interactions, alongside whispers, inside jokes, or eye-rolling directed at an individual. Maybe a dancer being ignored when they enter a room, or constantly having to chase information. Subtle mocking about appearances, about technique, body shape, or costume, from cliques that quietly determine who get to belong. These behaviours erode confidence, motivation, and safety. The hardest part is that many victims won't speak up. They fear being labelled dramatic or weak. That's why teachers must learn to recognise relational cues, the quiet signals that something could be wrong. So let's look at relational dynamics and why it happens. Bullying grows in environments where belonging feels conditional. When approval in the studio is tied to achievement, casting, or proximity to authority, a hierarchy forms. Students start policing one another to protect their own place in that hierarchy. Bullying then becomes a way to manage anxiety, an unconscious attempt to control where they fit in the social ladder. The ringleader often fears exclusion themselves and uses dominance or manipulation to stay safe. This is why a studio's emotional climate is so critical. If students only feel valued when they're succeeding, empathy collapses and comparison can take over. Let's take a look at bullying between gender differences. Research shows gender plays a role in how bullying manifests. Let's look at female dancers. Female dancers often engage in relational aggression, social exclusion, silent treatment, gossip, or subtle alliance building. It's quiet but calculated. The goal is to isolate. Male dancers tend to display more overt behaviours, mocking, teasing, or power posturing. It's visible but sometimes dismissed as banter. Both forms are harmful. The key is that understanding female aggression tends to attack relationships, while male aggression often attacks status or competence when it's most prevalent. Bullying tends to peak between the ages of 9 and 15, when social identity and belonging are at the front of the mind. In juniors, it might be subtle exclusion or imitation. By adolescence, it becomes more strategic, forming alliances, spreading rumours, or social media targeting. At this age, students are emotionally perceptive but lack maturity to manage envy or insecurity, so they express it through control. Studios that are inclusive, that teach emotional regulation, psychological safety, and teamwork early on reduce bullying dramatically. Let's look at some systemic contributors in the dance studio that can contribute to bullying. Even the best intentioned studios can unintentionally feed these patterns. Common systemic contributors can include when praise or casting is repeatedly directed to a select few, lack of boundaries, when gossip or comparison is normalised, silence culture, when students fear speaking up, competition without emotional education, when dancers are pushed to win without learning how to lose with grace, that is not healthy for the emotional development of the dancer. These conditions teach students that power and belonging are earned through status, not basic human respect. Leadership means continually checking whether your studio's structure rewards empathy as much as achievement. Let's take a look at the role of parents. Parents can make or break your efforts in creating a healthy environment. So how parents can help? Support your studio's process by reporting concerns privately rather than discussing them with other parents. Encourage their children to focus on effort and growth, not placement or praise. Reinforce empathy by asking questions like, how do you think your friend felt when that happened? How parents can hinder comparing children publicly and gossiping, over-identifying with their child's success or disappointment, bringing competitive energy into a parent group chat. Studio owners can help reduce this by setting clear boundaries for parent communication and offering occasional education around child development, mindset, and healthy motivation. When I owned my school, I was so clear on the culture I wanted, especially having grown up in a culture that felt heavily competitive and dominated as well by parent committees and lots of politics. So I did not want that going on in my school. That was one thing I knew for sure. And so I did have to constantly manage, educate, and also make sure that I was treating all students as equally as possible, which sometimes can be difficult if you do have a competition piece and you want to put your most skilled dancers forward. That can be challenging. On that strategic level, I would always try and move the positions around during the dance so that that person is not at the front the whole time. So those little things are just tips to help watch out for. Let's look at how we can spot early signs of bullying. Here's what to look out for. Changes in group dynamics. Who sits together? Who suddenly doesn't? A dancer who used to be confident, becoming quiet or avoiding class. Sudden drops in participation, eye contact or enthusiasm. Emotional outbursts that seem disproportionate to small events. When you see this, resist the urge to immediately discipline. Observe quietly first and always ask yourself what's underneath the behaviour, what could be happening for them. Listen to tone and notice where power sits in the room. Creating a clear process for complaints. Every studio should have a formal system for how bullying is reported and addressed. Provide a standard form when a parent or a teacher or a student raises a concern. This keeps communication factual and prevents gossip. Clarify the intent. Ask whether they want the issue monitored, mediated, or formally addressed. Observation. Spend time watching the class to see the patterns firsthand. Mediation. Hold a calm, private meeting between the students involved with a teacher or neutral facilitator who is present. Documentation. Record everything. Dates, behaviours, and actions taken. Follow up. Check in after a week, 1 month, and again later to ensure safety and behavioural change. The more transparent your process, the more trust you build with students and families. Repair and education. Repair is not just about stopping bad behaviour. It's about teaching better ways of relating and communicating, having restorative conversations where every dancer reflects on how their actions affect others, and also getting them to maybe curiously have a look underneath as to why they're acting out. When people bully, it's usually because they're feeling insecure, jealous or envious, and they don't know how to own those feelings. Reinforce empathy by helping them name feelings. I felt left out, or I was embarrassed, for example. Encourage responsibility, not blame. If appropriate, design a short workshop on communication, emotional awareness, boundaries, and inclusion. Repair also means reflecting as leaders. Were there any conditions that allowed this to happen? Did the system inadvertently reward the wrong behaviour? As teachers, we want to focus on rewarding effort, not outcomes, but to still show respect and empathy to all dancers no matter where they are on their dance journey. Let's look at a preventative culture. Sustained prevention requires leadership, not constant policing. Set studio values that prioritise respect, inclusivity and teamwork, and live by them. Integrate mindset and relational awareness into your teaching curriculum. Teach students how to manage envy, frustration, and competition healthily. Hold team meetings to review class culture, not just choreography. Offer clear communication, channels where students can safely express concerns. Celebrate cooperation and kindness as much as performance success. When respect and empathy are visible parts of your studio language, they become part of the student's behaviour. If you're a studio owner or a teacher, take a few minutes this week to reflect. Are there dancers who seem disconnected from the group? Are my teachers trained to recognise social exclusion? Does our reward system value effort and integrity as much as results? Do we have a transparent process for handling bullying? These are hallmarks of emotionally intelligent leadership. High-level dance training will always involve some level of pressure and comparison, but it should never compromise emotional safety. When bullying goes unaddressed, it damages more than one child. It fractures the integrity of the entire studio. Healthy studios are built upon curiosity, communication and courage. When we handle relational issues with openness and care, dancers learn life skills that extend far beyond the stage. Thank you for joining me for this very important episode. If you want more tips on leadership, make sure you sign up to my newsletter at katehiston.com. And if you found this episode valuable, like, comment, and share with a friend. Thank you so much. And in the meantime, let's keep it real.